So to start, just as always, spending a few moments just sitting, adjusting your posture. Ideally, you'll be right forwards on your chair, but if that really isn't comfortable, even for a few moments, do feel free to sit back. We want to get a sense of our feet continuing to support us even though we're in the chair. So slightly angled forwards, about 30% of your weight in your feet, but most of your weight sinking back through your hips and lower back, buttocks. Paying attention to your posture has two really sort of important benefits. One being, of course, the improvement in your posture is always a good thing, and we get into place qualities and feelings and awareness of sort of like positioning that when we come to the exercises can easily get lost. So you sort of like establish them to start off with before you do anything else. It also serves to bring our attention more fully into our body. That helps with the maintenance of posture, but also leads to this very sort of deep sense of calmness that we so characteristic of the art. One of the great outcomes, one of the great benefits of the art. Just try a little sort of experiment. Just lift your shoulders up towards your ears and then let them drop. Do that a couple of times. And just note that feeling of what I would call releasing or letting go. And people say, as you drop. It's a very big movement, this one. It's the letting go that we're really looking for here. And then do sort of the same thing with your hips and lower back. Don't lift them up, but just grip tightly, sort of pull your hips in and just a little bit, very carefully. And then the same thing, just drop, just release. So it feels like, to me, I'm dropping along where I'm going down just a little bit, but it feels like a much bigger drop when I do that. So when we talk about releasing our hips, and this is true for standing, in fact, it's in many ways more true for standing, we experience a feeling of dropping, even when it's not possible for the hips to drop any further, which they can't at the moment because they're in a chair. So it's a feeling from within the body, a feeling of things dropping within the body. And when we talk about releasing in places like hips and shoulders and other joints, other parts of the body, this is the feeling that we're looking for. And of course, the feeling of an act can actually help with the act. With the act, it becomes part of our overall intention to get that feeling of releasing really all through our body as much as possible. I'll come back to that in a few moments, but first, rubbing your hands together. And then tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. Important in the chillier weather that we're getting to maintain like the warmth of your body, your circulation, particularly if you're going to start doing something. As always, these are great exercises at the start of the day. Even do them laying down in bed. Prepare yourself for getting up. The upper part of the chest. And then your belly. And finally, your legs. Now extend your feet out So you drop back in the chair. And again, thinking about this quality of releasing, letting go, relaxing, they're all aspects of the Chinese term sum. And as we do that, we get that feeling of dropping more heavily into the chair. We may also notice that there's areas of the body that simply refuse to release. This is not uncommon, but generally we feel more solid in the chair, and we're a little bit more aware of the support that the chair gives us. And as we release tightness in the body, you may notice a change in your breathing, the feeling of circulation, maybe whatever, you begin to notice changes. And again, we could try this. You could just try tensing up your shoulders and then deliberately releasing, tensing up, releasing. Maybe the same in your hips again, tense and release, tense and release. And once again, these are things that we want to try and bring into the upright postures. And once again, we see that it's not just the external quality that we're looking for, it's the internal feel that we can begin to recognize and bring into our intention as we go through the different movements and postures. So then coming back to the upright position, again, if you can be forwards a little bit, then fine, but you won't always see me forwards. If I feel that my back's straining a bit, I'm quite happy to move back. Looking for that releasing feeling through the whole of your body as much as possible. And just recognizing that as we do that, we can become a little bit more aware of how we are being supported by our legs, by the chair, of course, but by our hips and buttocks, lower back. And importantly, particularly for the upper part of the body, this sense of allowing the outer regions of the body to flow into and then downward in towards where the skeleton, the spine, and so on lie, so that we get away from the unconscious idea that we have to strain to be upright. The back should feel longer, broader than the front of your body, rib cage and all the internal organs, even just to hang slightly, rather than feeling that you have to sort of like hold them up in some particular way. So we begin to use the natural structures of our body. And then trying to maintain this feeling in the body, very gently turning your head from side to side. One of the characteristics for me of these postures, seated and standing, is that they leave a bit of space in the body for movement. And when I move, I want the movement to just fill up that space like water flowing into a hollow on the ground. I'm not trying to get to here and think, right, I'm going to strain further. Just see how far you can go with that very fluid feeling in the movement. Then hands in front of your shoulders, and the same idea. Nice smooth circle. This time, just see if you can notice also what's happening in your chest, in your sides, in your upper back. These movements are associated with each other, and we want to get to a point where those internal changes of expansion and contraction produce the movement rather than the other way around. That's an ongoing process, I think, in Tai Chi. Moving forwards. So we start to feel a sense of connection through the length of our bodies. This time, let your hands come to the sides, your elbows slightly out. Feel the weight of your arms and rotate your arms. And when you do this, try and feel that the big muscles of your arms, biceps, triceps, radial muscle, and indeed your shoulders are quite soft. They're obviously being used, but not stiff and tight. And in releasing those muscles, we start to realize that more of our arm gets involved in the movement. So we're aware not just of connections in our body through the length of our body, you know, hips to shoulders and so on and so forth, but also through the depth of our body, from our skin right into our bones. It seems as though every part of the body commits to the movement. And then raising your hands and winding around. At least it will feel like the whole body. Once we get into the full range of exercises, just trying to establish that way of moving from inside out as much as you can at this point. And then back the other way. Awareness is always going to be a key part in this process. Tilting your pelvis forward so more of your weight goes into your feet until you just get to a point where your feet and legs expand and push you back. In terms of those connections in the body, the area between hips and waist that includes your pelvis is literally central. Move there, and as you can see from this exercise, that area rolls forward like a ball rolling forwards. Your weight moves more into your feet, your shoulders come forwards, and so on and so forth. The changes radiate out from that central point. Now turn in the center of your body so more of your weight goes into one leg. Notice the difference in feeling between what we call the full leg, the one with the weight in it, the majority of the weight, and the empty leg. Then this time, just turn a little bit in the center of your body so, you know, direct the majority of the weight towards one leg. The one leg is full, the other one is empty. And we just get used to this awareness of, you know, how things change within our body with particular movements. And once again, the movement of our weight will become a key factor in developing the exercises. Turn the other way. And then moving from the center of your body, so your pelvis, your hips, rolling your pelvis around, feeling how that draws your shoulders and your head around in a circle, but then in between your spine, gently floating in your back. So don't make the movement too big. Don't artificially move your shoulders and your head. Feel them being moved by the movement in your pelvis. Change direction. Come back to the center. Push one heel up and step out. Put your heel down, lower your toes. Just press in gently and back. And measure your steps so you can plant the foot in the right position. To give you the ability just to press in very gently, not hard. And on the other side. And then just sit back, give yourself a moment to review your posture again. Hips sinking back. Those are you're held between your hips and your feet. Nice open, long feeling through your back. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Now, sitting back into your hips. Your hands drop down to your sides, turn them palm forwards again. Same as we did before, but this time moving your weight as you rotate your arms forwards and backwards as bird folds its wings. So combining different elements that we've just been through individually, transferring your weight, feeling the movements in your upper body. One more going forwards, and then this time, leaving your hands facing back, and letting your arms begin to swing from your shoulders. This fisherman cast net. The hands just drop down in a gentle curve. They naturally swing up a little bit. Your weight stops, and then the hand just continues a little bit. So you're pulling on your arm for most of the time until it just swings past your hips and your knees. So your arm very soft. Remember that feeling of in the big muscles. So you feel as though the big muscles of your arms are being very gently massaged. One more time, going forwards, and then goes the ball underneath your arms that you're rolling in towards your chest. Your hands drop down. Next time you come to the upright position, turning your hands palm in, drawing your elbows out. Pigeon spreads its wings. Just feeling the extension, contraction, the opening, closing across your chest and across your upper back. Next time, as you come back, your elbows go out, but your hands stay in front of your hips. You're going to the movement pushing wave. Hands are quite low down. because of the shape of your arm, as your arm gets pushed away from your body, it will naturally curve up. Try and avoid the habit of sort of lifting your hands and pushing. Just let them curve, almost like they're curving underneath and upwards. Nice smooth curve. Your arms are being moved by the transfer of your weight from foot to foot and by patterns of expansion and contraction working within your upper body. One more time. And hands loosely fisted. Rotating as they push forwards and reversing that as they're drawn back. Never tight, no stiff. One more time. Open your fingers, then your hands palm out. Winding out and back, drop your hands down, just let them draw in onto your hips and again pressing forwards. This is how your arms gently extend. With all the movements in any direction of any type, always trying to feel that at the end of the expanding stage, you could have gone a little bit further. And that helps to just maintain this spacious feeling within our body, which facilitates the movement. Now, when you sit back, turn your hands palm down, turn, tilt forwards, just let your back extend a little bit. So you can let that extension into your arms and your hands, and then contracting back in. And the opposite way is just polishing the table. One more time. Back to the center. Turn your hands palm up, with your hips sinking, with your shoulders sinking. And then pushing up, your upper body expanding and contracting. So it feels like your spine between your pelvis and your shoulders just lengthens out a little bit. The ribs in the rib cage just separating a little bit and then drawing back down. There's a push from your feet, a push from your hips, and the combination gives you this feeling of a wave rising up through your body, moving your arms for you. Let your breath come naturally, not trying for any particular breathing pattern, unless you've done this with me before and at some point I've offered a breathing pattern that was comfortable for you. Chances are it will be very close to what you're doing anyway. It's natural for your body to inhale as that space in the upper body gets bigger. And then this time, turn your hands out. The same kind of feeling, but a little bit more expansive back to the sides. This is the wild goose. This lovely image of the bird in flight. Expanding, contracting. And get that to be a nice steady rhythm, very smooth, fluid movements. And it has a very soothing quality about it. And after this one, dropping your hands down, cross in front of your knees, sitting back, sinking into your hips, and then pushing up, heart in the clouds. So as much as possible, when we make any movement, we want to engage the whole of our body. So if I exaggerate, here, I can't do it with both arms and chair, but I go forwards, my hand goes there. I use my legs to push back. I sink my hips into the chair, and then I expand out. Do the same thing again. That is very exaggerated. I wouldn't normally do it with a bent back like that. I was just trying to demonstrate something that I feel rather than something that you could necessarily see. That sense of settling in, and I suppose a slight feeling as you do that of kind of compression into the chair, which then leads to the expansion. So that happens when we get that feeling of releasing. So I go back, and as I sink back into the chair, I'm releasing my hips, my spine, all along the length of my spine and my shoulders, and then I feel the push up. So that releasing in our body, allowing gravity downwards through our body, really is the thing that initiates all the movements that we make. Now, dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Let your arms drop down. Again, releasing in your hips and your lower back, particularly on one side, feeling the expansion, pushing up, and then pulling down. Transfer your attention to the other side, get that feeling of releasing, contraction, and then the expansion. So these are all things that gradually draw our attention away from simply our arms. And one of the attributes that we develop, I think, with the Tai Chi is an ability to observe what is going on through the whole of our body, maybe with a particular emphasis in some areas, but not losing that sense of what else is going on. And this is where that quietening of our attention comes in. One of the images I rather like for that is what they call the watchtower. When our mind is quiet, it's like we're sitting on a cliff, looking out over the sea, just looking, observing. But if you're running along the cliff, you won't be able to observe in the same way. So for that to happen, for the observation to happen, we need a degree of stillness in our attention. And so bringing our thoughts into our body in this way can actually help us with that. And in particular, bringing our attention to this middle part of our body between hips and waist. That is, if you like, where we sit and look out. It's not the only thing to do with mind in the art, but it's the starting point for everything else. And then hands together, pushing up, lengthening through your back. Movement expands out from that center of the body, contracts in, expands out, contracts in. So we're aware of other things, but always coming back to that point of stillness. And it's as though our awareness radiates out from that, like the ripples in a pond when you throw a stone in. A series of concentric circles. The first one you may notice broad detail. The third circle you may notice what's going on, that feeling of movement in your arm, and so on and so forth. But the emphasis here is that the start of the process, and the consistent element in that process is that point of stillness, which we locate physically in the center part of our body. And this time, extend one foot, knees slightly bent, foot's just resting on its heel. Go forwards, so you're scooping water up in your arms, fingers facing forwards. Sink your hips back, pulling your arms over. Feel the expansion upwards through the front of your body, and then forwards again. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Just being careful when you go forwards, not to strain or to stiffen up in your back. And then this time let your hands drop down. Roll them again into a hollow fist going forwards. This time a slight upward projection. Drawing your arms over, grasping the tiger's ears. Sit back, settle into your hips, and an extent in the non-extended leg. Swing forwards. One more time. Good. Change your feet over. Same two exercises. The other foot forward, scooping the sea, and looking at the sky. Excuse me. Try and get into the habit of releasing through your hips every time your weight comes back in. And again, benefits really to mind and body there, that sense of not being in a hurry. And when I talk about there being space in our body, there's also space in our thoughts here. Everything just kind of settles. One of the old writings in Tai Chi poetically urges us to seek the stillness within the movement. And then sinking into your hips as your hands drop down, pushing away, grasping the tiger. One more time. Come back to the basic posture and sit again to see how this feels now. After doing a few movements, not necessarily going to feel any different, but sometimes maybe because your body's warmed up, maybe a little bit more focused in your attention, all sorts of reasons why that might happen. Hips sinking down, 30% of your weight in your feet, that longer, broader feeling through your back. These are all qualities that one way or another we want to try and find in the standing. The technical side of it is going to be different. Positioning of your weight, positioning of your feet, and positioning of your hips, and so on and so forth. How your hips relate to your shoulders will all change because you've changed shape. You've stood up. But the qualities that we find within this posture of stillness, spaciousness, calmness, so on and so forth, whatever you associate with this posture, and this can be a very personal thing, are qualities that we look for in the standing. And so our memory, if you like to think of it like that, of how it can feel when we're sitting correctly, and we've got the openness and spaciousness and so on, can actually help us to find that posture when we're standing, because our bodies are very responsive to memories, to images, and they can all become part of our intent. So this is one of the ways that we begin to really integrate what we think of as mind, what we think of as body in Tai Chi. The other side is again is that technical side. Sometimes you can effectively instruct the body, this is how I want you to feel. Sometimes that will work for us. Other times it's not quite there, and it doesn't feel quite right. And that's when we come back to the technical awareness. Have I got my feet in the right position? Have I got my shoulders in the right position? So both those ways of approaching this are important and complementary. And it's important to realize that this isn't just something that we feel, it's something that we understand. It's not just something that we write about and talk about, it's something that we actually experience in our bodies. So, rubbing your hands together. And tapping over your face. Once again. Over your head and neck. Shoulder. And then your arm. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. your belly. And your legs. Push your heels up, just to get the muscles of your legs working before we try and stand on them. And knees going around in a circle with the rotation in your hips and ankles and back the other way. Good. Okay, and then stand. So again, as always, you might find it useful at times to use the chair for support. I'm going to move mine out of the way, otherwise I'll keep bumping into it. So we have an idea about how we want things to feel. We have the intent to feel like that, and as you progress in Tai Chi, I think you'll find, as I have, that intention becomes important. It guides our movements from moment to moment. As I said, in and of itself, it's not the whole story, but it is very useful. One way we can bring that into the posture we're about to take, if you stand with your feet hip width apart and rock your weight forwards and backwards in your feet. So I use this pole as an example, the center line of my body. Two ways of thinking of this. One is that it moves with me, like this. So I'm not doing this, not bending, not away. The whole of my upper body is moving. The other is that if I imagine it's there and I leave it behind, I don't get too far from it. Because if I'm straight too far from that center line, I'll start to stumble and tense and so on and so forth. So it's a fairly small movement, but see if you can just recognize where there's that point of equilibrium, where you feel that sense of the qualities that you found in the chair. It's about coming into line with the pull of gravity. And when we've got that alignment with the pull of gravity, there's less need for our body to stiffen up. A little bit forward, a little bit back. I'll start gripping. And just see if you can come to rest there and begin to let your hips drop back and pushing up. So your body contracts down towards the ground and expands out of it. We root down, we drop our center of gravity. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. Push up. Turn your hands over as though they're resting on the ball and sink down. At the bottom of the movement, turn your hands out, going into the wild goose, push up and down. And then at the end of this movement, let your hands drop, cross in front of your belly and part in the cloud. So the three movements that we did in the chair, and it's quite tricky going back to the first one, but just feeling the movements within your body and trying to maintain, again, whatever quality you identified, stillness, flow of movement, spaciousness. As we go through the movements, and just notice how some of the movements that we make can actually begin to make us lose those qualities. For instance, if as you push your hands up, you pull your hands back, which is for some reason quite a common habit, then it won't feel quite right. And so, sometimes we can just intuitively make the adjustments. Other times, as I said, we might want to think about, have I got feet in the right position? Am I extending my arms too far? Are my shoulders in line with my hips? All these little technical points that over over the time of attending classes and practicing, we begin to absorb. One more round. Good, and then give your legs a shake. We do lots of things in our lives that are quite complicated. Reaching your hand out to open a door is a very complex operation, and we don't think about all the kind of details that are involved in that. We don't think about how the door was manufactured and so on. So we just open the door. There's an intention to go through the door. Our body takes that intention, it becomes an instruction, our body does it, and we don't have to think about it. But then one day we go to open the door and it's not opening. We think, well, why isn't it open? And then we have to sort of look at the door and think, what's there? Maybe we realise the door is locked, or the hinges aren't working properly, or something like that. So that's when we bring that what I've described as the technical awareness into our actions. And if you've never come across the door before, then you would start with the technical side. What's this? What happens if I do this, and so on and so forth. And a lot of things that we have learned in our lives that we do without even having to think about it, tying shoelaces up and so on and so forth. Actually, when we started doing them, we had to learn how to do them. And it's the same in Tai Chi. We learn how to do the movements, we learn how the postures should work, and so on and so forth. And then it becomes more intuitive. And that's when it slips into our daily lives. And this is important, that when we're walking down the road and maybe we slip a little bit or something like that, we want to root down. If you've worked at the technical side of rooting down, if you've thought about where your hips should be and so on and so forth, all the stuff that we cover in the classes, you're far more likely to kind of intuitively root down. It may not look like great Tai Chi, but you'll still be upright. So you haven't got time. If you have that little trip, you haven't got time to think about, oh, where should my shoulders be? It has to happen straight away. Like most of the time, you open the door without having to think about it. So when we come into a posture like this, want to have one foot forward, check, are your feet hip width apart? Do you have the right length of step? Can you feel, as you start to move your weight, how that carries your body forwards and backwards? Can you feel how you're kind of getting the weight to transform, and so on and so forth? And then as your weight arrives in each leg, you have that little moment of releasing. Remember, we did that in the chair earlier in the session. That sense of opening up in areas like our hips, releasing in our knee, so that we feel a certain amount of weight in the leg. We release it, feels stronger, and then we feel the push into the other leg. It's only this is the other thing about a lot of the stuff that we begin to do intuitively, that to start off with, it seems to take ages. When we're thinking, I'm going to do this with my knee, I'm going to do this with my shoulder, this long list of things. But if we get used to thinking of that and practicing that, then a lot of these things will happen very quickly. It only takes a moment to properly settle. And then as you settle, raise your toes, front toes, so your weight's in your back leg, and go forwards, push your back knee forwards, heel comes up, and that adds to that feeling of your weight flowing down through your leg. And we gradually increase the amount of our weight that is supported by one leg and come closer to being in line once again over one leg rather than over both legs. And that's when we can take the step. You bring your foot in, extend out, put your heel down, lower your toes. I have my front foot turned out when I do this because I like my hip to open up a little bit. It means more of my weight can flow through. The back foot is already turned out. But again, I want to be careful about that. I don't want the foot right out there. Now it's going to be difficult because it's tumbling all over the place. So I want a little angle there, but not too much. Same with my back leg, because I want to basically face forwards while I'm doing this. So I get the feeling of my weight going into my leg. I kind of know it's there and I can step in. But there's also a technical side. I'll be thinking, oh, maybe the foot's turned out too far or something like that. Shake out. Roll the foot forwards. First of all, transferring the weight. When I'm doing this fixed step, as we would call it, my toes, front toes point forward, my back foot is still turned out. Noticing if there's anything interrupting the process. Maybe as I come along, my back's a bit stiff and it doesn't feel quite well. And then looking to release, to let go in those areas. But also maybe, I may be doing that, then realize that I'm leaning forwards or leaning backwards or something like that, that my shoulders aren't in line with my hips. And then raising toes and heel. And stepping in. And then taking a few steps through, whichever direction you have the space, carefully planting your foot. And then going back. Okay. Have your right foot forward, so mirror my movements. Bring your weight into your back foot. Turn a little bit to your right. Let that swing your arms out. Come forwards. Turn a little bit to your left. Again. And this time, when you go forwards and turn, feel a slight pull on your back hip, raising your back heel, bring your foot in, step forwards, go forwards, turn. Again, just let the back heel lift, step through. This is dragonfly skims the water. And if you're comfortable with this, you bring the foot in and you raise. Noticing the alignment of your body. So just for a moment here, you're checking your posture. Are your hips level and so on and so forth. When you run out of room in one direction, You just start going backwards. So dragonfly skims the water. And your hips sink back. You haven't got much room, you can always do this side to side. And then just come back. And shake out. So go back to your chair. I mentioned earlier the idea of the watchtower. Another image that I like for this, the sort of general feel of these postures is the mountain, the image of sort of that inner strength, the stillness, the spaciousness, and so on. And it's very much the starting point and the heart of this art, going back to that idea of a circle of awareness going out. The mountain, the watchtower, is at the center of that circle. We would like it to be a constant presence. In practice, we often lose that awareness. So the last exercise is always embrace tiger, return to the mountain, really shows us the pathway back to that quality. So wait a little bit forwards, arms hanging down and then pushing out. Bring the hands around as though you're going to sort of hold a ball against your chest. Let your elbows drop, bringing your hands in. Feel your hips sinking into the chair, shoulders dropping, and just coming back to this basic position. Rest for a moment and then repeat. Embrace tiger, return to the mountain. And let your hands rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.